From the WGBH Newsroom, I'm Adam Reilly, and you're watching another installation of the Scrum, our ongoing multimedia series about politics in and around Boston. I'm joined today, as I often am, by WGBH contributor and Boston Magazine, I should say WGBH political analyst and Boston Magazine contributing editor David Bernstein, and our other WGBH political analyst, Peter Kadzis. Guys, thank you both for being here. First off, let's talk about the home stretch in the mayoral preliminary election and the endorsements that we've seen in recent days. We've had all sorts of different endorsements from celebrities, from interest groups, from politicians. Are any of these going to be decisive, or if not decisive, just really valuable in the race? And are any of them total wastes?
Well, I'm normally very skeptical of endorsements, especially in big races like for president or for governor. But in the Boston mayor's race, every little bit helps. And I think the two newspaper endorsements in this instance do count for something. The Boston Herald came in first. They endorsed District Attorney Dan Conley and John Conley. Probably more importantly, they urged people not to vote for Marty Walsh, right, which would be a plus in some quarters. And then the Boston Globe weighed in with John Conley and John Barris.
No, actually, just to back up a sec, when you say that it'll be a plus in some quarters to have the Herald urging people not to vote for Walsh, what do you mean?
Because some people, especially more progressive folk, will, if the Herald says something's black, they're going to say it's white.
Got it.
So in an odd sort of way, you don't want to be dissed, but it adds to Walsh's credibility in certain circles.
David, how valuable do you think the Globe endorsement was for Connolly and Barris?
I think it was good for Connolly. In particular, he wants a sort of status quo because he seems to be in the lead and in a position to get one of those two spots. So he doesn't want one of his biggest competitors to get any kind of boost. So better for him to get it than someone else.
And that would be, say, Dan Conley, Marty Walsh,
Charlotte Golar-Ritchie, who they really ranked very low, the Globe. I would caution against expecting those newspaper endorsements from changing much. I know a lot of John Barros supporters are thinking that it's going to be a big game changer, lifting him out of sort of the second or third tier into competition. But ask U.S. Senator Alan Casey whether that's the way it plays out, because they thought the same thing when the Globe endorsed him.
Actually, let me just jump in for a second. Isn't it possible that we talked a week or two ago about the momentum that you guys thought Barros was developing? Isn't it possible that if that momentum is genuine,
right,
that the Globe endorsement could convince some people who would like to support Barros but don't want to waste their vote that, okay, this guy's actually valuable? You don't think so?
Well, I don't think in Barros' case. It may add a point, but in all three polls, he is not even in the second tier. Listen, he's an incredibly appealing candidate, and people who want to vote for him should go out and vote for him. But the endorsements, I want to know about the Louis Gossett Jr. endorsement. To me, that don't you think that could be a groundbreaker?
Louis Gossett Jr., of course, endorsing Charlotte Golar-Ritchie.
Correct.
Hoping to become Boston's first African-American and female mayor. What do you think of that?
I think that campaigns are always trying to, especially in the days coming up to the election, they want to show momentum by rolling out a whole series of endorsements, and a celebrity draws some attention. I don't think a whole lot of people see that and think, Louis Gossett Jr. knows what's best for my schools or for public safety of Boston. That one seemed a little off to me.
One thing I found interesting about that endorsement was the way that it put race front and center. I mean, the first words out of his mouth were something like, I'm Louis Gossett Jr., and I've spent my life fighting racism, or something like that. And then he went on to basically suggest that a vote for Charlotte Golar-Ritchie would be a vote in line with his lifelong crusade, which struck me.
Well, I think with a number of the relatively large number of minority candidates in there, I think that makes sense. I did not view it as, playing the race card. For example, when Gloria Steinem endorsed Golar-Ritchie, she gets credit for being a feminist, and Golar-Ritchie is the only woman in the race, and that's good. And I see the Lou Gossett Jr. as endorsement is, even though I was sort of making fun of it, it sets her apart from the other candidates. Say, City Councilor Yancey, for example.
Yeah, yeah. What about the endorsements that we're seeing from politicians like Byron Rushing today endorsing Felix Arroyo, and from interest groups like the Boston Teachers Union coming out and making some endorsements? How much, let's start with the BTU one. David, you moderated a BTU debate recently. How much does their endorsement matter?
Well, it certainly could help a little bit, because they gave their endorsement to two candidates, Felix Arroyo and Rob Consalvo, both of whom are sort of in that second tier, trying to get some boost up. And if they can get some of those teachers to back them, I mean, there's some 5,000 BTU members living in Boston, and they tend to vote. So that could help boost them up. But really, what either of them would have needed is for something earlier and bigger from the BTU. The BTU can really mobilize and spend money on a candidate's behalf, do mailers and so forth, and that's not going to happen in this case. I think the BTU is giving $5,000 to each candidate, and, so it's a marginal effect.
Okay, real quick, we're
it
getting
could
out of
also
time
be
here.
the kiss of death for people who don't like the Boston Teachers Union.
But I do think that politicians are going to help out in giving credibility to people on a sort of neighborhood by neighborhood level.
We got to avoid a shameful second air horn here. David Bernstein, Peter Kadzis, as always, thank you for being here. Thank you, as always, for watching the Scrum, and we'll see you again next week when we know who the two mayoral candidates are going to be in the final. Thanks.
Vote on Tuesday.
Yes, vote on Tuesday.